Grigory Rasputin was a public figure known as a healer, an old man capable of curing people of severe illnesses. He was close to the last emperor's family, especially to his wife Alexandra Feodorovna. He had a direct influence on political decisions in the country. His name is shrouded in an aura of mystery, and historians still cannot give an accurate assessment of Rasputin, who was a great soothsayer or charlatan. This is the channel Learning the World. Let's go! Grigory Rasputin was born January 21, 1869, in the family of a simple peasant, Efim Yakovlevich and Anna Vasilyevna, who lived in the village Pokrovskoy, Tobolsk province. The day after his birth, the boy was baptized in church with the name Grigory, which means awake. He became the fourth and only surviving child of his parents. His older brothers and sisters had died in infancy due to poor health. At the same time, he was also weak from birth, so he could not play enough with his peers, which was the reason for his reticence and craving for privacy. It was in his early childhood Rasputin felt an affinity for God and religion. In doing so, he tried to help his father to graze cattle, go to the carriage, to harvest and participate in any agricultural work. There was no school in the village of Pokrovsko, so Rasputin grew up illiterate, as did all his fellow villagers, but stood out for its disability, for which he was considered flawed. At age 14, Rasputin became seriously ill and was almost dying, but suddenly his condition began to improve, which, he said, happened thanks to the Mother of God who healed him. From that moment, Rasputin began to deeply know the gospel and, not being able even to read, was able to memorize the texts of the prayers by heart. At that time, the peasant's son awoke the gift of clairvoyance, which prepared him a dramatic fate. After Rasputin was 18 years old, he went on a pilgrimage to the Verkhotursk monastery, but he never took monastic vows. A year later, he returned to his homeland and soon married Praskovia Dubrovina, who would later bear him 3 children. The conclusion of his marriage was not an obstacle to his pilgrimage. In 1893, he went on a new journey, visiting the Greek monastery on Mount Athos and Jerusalem. In 1900, Rasputin visited Kiev and Kazan, where he met Father Michael, associated with the Kazan Theological Academy. All these visits again convinced Rasputin of his chosenness and gave reason to dedicate his healing gift to those around him. Returning to Pokrovskoy, he tried to lead a life of a true old man, but before this ascetic he was far away. In addition, his religious views clashed little with canonical orthodoxy. It's all in the powerful temperament of Rasputin, who could not do without women, wine, music and dancing. God is joy and fun, Rasputin repeatedly asserted. People from all over the country streamed to the small Siberian village, longing to find healing and deliverance from disease. They were not embarrassed by the illiteracy of the old man and his complete lack of medical education. But good acting ability allowed Rasputin convincingly portray the people's doctor, using in his manipulations advice, prayer and persuasion. Rasputin's life was full of various events. He fought for social justice. In 1914, he spoke out against the war and also fought for equal rights for absolutely everyone, including the Jews, which at the time was not exactly popular, supported the poor and condemned the death penalty. Several cases are known in which Rasputin defended the persecution of Jews. However, Rasputin knew how to capitalize on everything, even his own beliefs. For example, if a man asked that his son was not sent to the army, this service was worth 200 rubles, which at that time was considered a lot of money. Once, Rasputin in a crowded restaurant boasted that he had a strong influence on the Tsar and Tsarina, and even slept with Alexandra. People sitting at nearby tables, interested in his personality. In response, he simply stood up, pulled down his pants, exposing his 30-centimeter penis. To those present, this proof was more than enough. When the Tsarina heard these rumors, she refused to believe them, saying that it was the tricks of an impostor who claimed to be Rasputin. Decisive in the attitude of the royal family to Rasputin was the fact that he healed the Tsarevich. As is known, the heir, Tsarevich Alexei, suffered from hemophilia. This disease was transmitted through his mother's side and was expressed in poor blood clotting. Every bruise could lead to internal hemorrhage, every wound could become life-threatening. Naturally, like any mother, this tormented the empress. She felt guilty about it and sought to atone for it. When it turned out that Rasputin, by suggestion, better to cope with the manifestations of the disease than all the specialist doctors, which created a very special position for the elder Rasputin. The Empress sees in him a man on whom, in the literal sense of the word, depends on the life of her dearly loved son. In addition, for their Majesties, Rasputin was a living representative of the people, the embodiment of the peasantry, the little man. They were struck by his manner of holding himself, which to another person would be considered indecent. His rustic accent, his unceremoniousness, his clumsiness, were all turned to his advantage. His behavior was in direct contrast to the manner of the court circles, imbued with the sole purpose of making a favorable impression on the sovereign. Against the background of their pretense, his sincerity and simplicity were striking in their naturalness and were undeniable. They were not made up. This can be explained by simple ideas. Rasputin about the Tsar, typical of the Russian peasant. Despite further revelations, for the royal family, Rasputin remained forever a saint, and nothing could make them change this conviction. Tsar Nicholas II's uncle, Grand Duke Nicholas, was an opponent of Rasputin and resented his boundless influence over the Tsarina. Tsar Nicholas was not a strong and strong-willed man, so he often succumbed to the influence of his wife. The fight went so far that Prince Nicholas threatened to hang Rasputin. That is why in 1915 Rasputin advised the king to remove the prince, who at that time was commander-in-chief of the Russian army. Rasputin used his position and fame as a holy man, predicted that Russia will not come out victorious from the war until the emperor himself leads the troops. However, Nicholas II was not ready for this. After a while, Nicholas II led the army, leaving the Tsarina to run the state, effectively transferring the reins of power to Rasputin. This was a rash decision, as it was military failures and economic problems that led to the Bolshevik uprising in Russia. As early as 1901, one of the priests accused Rasputin of belonging to one of the sections. However, there was no evidence for this accusation, and Rasputin himself denied it. Over time, he began to arrange in St. Petersburg Ouija seances. Many attributed to him an incredible hypnotic power, and claimed that he could make the pupils dilate in man. He was able to immediately recognize people. His heavy hypnotic looked very many subjugated. Prince Yusupov at the first meeting with Rasputin lost consciousness. And women were just crazy about his penetrating look. In addition, many attributed such a strong influence on the royal family it is the presence of hypnotic abilities. Rumors of healing abilities Rasputin spread since his youth, but even his parents did not believe it. His father believed that he became a pilgrim only because he was very lazy. There were several attempts on Rasputin's life. In 1914 he was stabbed in the stomach and seriously injured Kyonia Gusieva, who came from Tsaritsyn. She at that time was under the influence of Ilyador, who was an opponent of Rasputin, as he saw him as his main rival. Gusieva was placed in a psychiatric hospital, considered mentally ill, and after some time she was released. Ilyador himself more than once chased Rasputin with an axe, threatening to kill him, and for this purpose prepared 120 bombs. In addition, there were also several other attempts on the Holy Elder, but they were all unsuccessful. Before committing the murder of Rasputin, his opponents tried to destroy him spiritually. He was accused of whoredom, witchcraft, drunkenness, and lecherous behavior. But Nicholas II did not want to take into account any arguments, as he sacredly believed the elder and continued to discuss all state secrets with him. Therefore, a conspiracy arose in 1914, initiated by Prince Felix Yusupov, Grand Duke Nikolai Nikolaevich Jr., who later became commander-in-chief of all the military forces of the Russian Empire during the First World War, and Vladimir Purishkevich, who was at that time a real civilian advisor. At first attempt to kill Grigory Rasputin failed. December 29, 1916, the old man was invited to the palace of Prince Yusupov for a meeting with a famous beauty, Princess Irina, who needed znakarstva Grigory Yefimovich. There he was treated to poisoned food and drink, but the potassium cyanide did not kill Rasputin, which led the conspirators to shoot him. After several shots to the back, the elder continued to fight for his life and even managed to run out into the street, trying to escape the killers. After a brief pursuit accompanied by gunfire, the healer fell to the ground and was brutally beaten by his pursuers. The exhausted and battered old man was then tied up and thrown from the Petrovsky Bridge into the Neva. According to historians, being in the icy water, Rasputin died only a few hours later. Nicholas II ordered the investigation into the murder of Rasputin. Director of the police department Alexei Vasilyev, who came upon the trail of the healer's killers. 2 months after the elder's death, Emperor Nicholas II was overthrown from the throne, and the head of the new provisional government ordered a hasty end to the investigation of Rasputin. Shortly before his death, Rasputin, feeling the danger hanging over him, sent the empress a letter in which he said that if his killer was someone from the royal family, Nicholas II and all his relatives would die within 2 years. They say he had such a vision. And if the murderer was a commoner, the imperial family would prosper for a long time. That's all for today. If you liked the video, like it and don't forget to subscribe. Bye everyone.